Hey guys, it's Fox with my second part of the cast assessment for Millennials versus Gen X. The reason why there's such a long wait is I filmed the second part. It was great. It was awesome. It'll make you laugh. It was going to make you cry. But when I tried to upload it, nothing happened. I kept on trying over and over and over again, so I was like, screw it. Film the second part all over again. Whatever. At least I can replace some of the bull crap I got wrong or I feel like was not particularly great. And do it over again. Same rules apply. Go through every single person in the cast, give my thoughts, all in one take, all unscripted. All right. First alphabetical order for the Gen X tribe is Brett. Brett seems cool. We've seen characters like Brett before, sort of like New England cop types. He's from Boston, and it seems like Survivor likes when people from Boston are intense, are outspoken. And I think that they try to go the same way with Brett here, so they kind of expect him to be a big mouth. Though I don't think he necessarily gives off that impression. I think he seems a little more reserved. He seems a little more cautious. So, and plus he seems smart and self-aware, strong in challenges. So Brett's not going to win. He's the type of guy who you want to have in your alliance, provided he keeps his mouth shut, but is not the type of person you want to take to the end. Because people tend to like cops, and that sort of like blue-collar, New England attitude is very appealing socially. So he could be an all-around threat. I don't see him winning, but he seemed like a nice enough guy. So then there's Chris. Okay, here's the thing about Chris. Chris is like, if I've never seen someone with less humor than Chris. This guy has no sense of humor. He kind of reminds me of Andrew Savage, which can go one of two ways. It can be Pearl Island's Andrew Savage, where you kind of want to root for him, and then Cambodia Savage, where he's a bit of a douche. I love both characters, and I think Chris is going to be hilarious. He could potentially be a villain because he seems like the type of guy who wants to strategize, very smart, but he is so by the book, and he's so incredibly robotic with how he comes off. I could see him go either way. So I expect him to stand around for a little bit because he's physically strong, he's smart, probably a good strategist, but good God, this guy, he's all over the place. So yeah. Cece. I don't really have very strong thoughts on Cece. She seems nice. Seems like a pretty chill person. Seems like for a reality TV show, she's got a pretty inoffensive personality, unassuming. She's got a good story. She seems to clearly work hard. She seems to have a good head on her shoulders. I imagine she'll get along with people very, very well. But other than that, she doesn't really give me a strong vibe either one way or the other. I will say that the Gen X tribe compared to the Millennials tribe is not as... Not a lot of the characters feel pretty normal, seem pretty like grounded. So I think that that's going to potentially be, a little interesting because not all the characters are necessarily like going to stick out. David, poor David. David reminds me a lot of Dan from Gabon, and that is not an endorsement because Dan from Gabon is this guy who was just like a sad puppy. And David, first of all, he writes for Family Guy. Can't stand that show. So that's one thing going against David is he writes for a crappy show. First season was all right. The second thing is this guy is wanting to use Survivor as a means to get over his social anxiety, which I'm sorry, is just absurd. You can't use Survivor. Sorry. Just had a thing pop up. You can't use Survivor as a means to gain self-confidence because you're going to be in a very stressful, very unnatural circumstance, and you're going to be physically, emotionally, and mentally exhausted all the time. So I think there's a chance David can kind of be like a nebbishy type who uses his knowledge of the game to his advantage and is oddly endearing, but David screams crash and burn. So don't have very high hopes for David. He does not look like he's long for this game. All right. Jessica. If there's anyone in this season who is going to be fucking purple, it's going to be Jessica. She has an impressive resume. She's just not interesting. Her past personality is not interesting. Unlike she's a district attorney, so I thought maybe she'd be a Dina, where she's at least kind of a cutthroat, white collar, take no prisoner types. But she doesn't come off like that. She's just very vanilla and very purple. So, and it's not her fault. She could potentially be very interesting. Obviously, casting saw something in her, but I just get the impression that she just doesn't have a very strong personality. And even on this tribe where the people are a little more like reined in and a little more well adjusted, she just doesn't stand out very much. So, if she's, I wouldn't be surprised if she's a first boot. If she goes if she goes a long way and just remains purple, wouldn't surprise me either. She's probably smart. I assume physically strong, but she doesn't give me much of an impression. So, Ken. First of all, I think it's hilarious that we consider Ken. Okay, the difference between Mary and Ken is 2 years. Okay, that's not a generational gap. That's 2 years. I've dated people with a greater distance from me, and I don't consider them like elders. So that's weird. Ken's got an interesting story. Seems like a laid-back guy, kind of counterculture. He's very good looking, physically strong, wants to raise his daughter. Excellent story. I imagine Ken will be very popular because he seems chill, he seems strong, and I just don't think a lot of things are going to bother him because he's lived on an island before. He lived off the grid, so none of this is going to be especially new to him. And I think Ken is the type of guy that they're going to want to keep around because he's probably easy to get along with, because he's physically strong, because he seems to have it together. But that Ken's the type of guy you don't want to go to the end with because he's good at everything, and you're going to cut him loose. So I see Ken going far, probably mid-jury. I think he's almost a lock for the merge unless like something happens or he's not giving off something that he otherwise would in his interviews. But otherwise, things look good for Ken, but I don't think he's going to win, personally. All right, so that's, then we have Lucy, weightlifter, probably very strong. Otherwise, Lucy did not impress me very much. I feel like she's very robotic. She, I think, represents sort of is in that mindset of the millennials are going to crash and burn, just simply because they're millennials. And I think if you go in with that attitude, you're going to lose because you can't buy into this idea that the Gen Xers and the millennials are going to work one way because of their generation. They're on the show. They're dynamic enough. They're good at something to warrant them being on the show. And I just don't think Lucy's very interesting. She says straight up in her in her interview that she's stubborn and she has to have it her way or the highway. And you can't be like that in Survivor. You have to be willing to make consensus. You have to be willing to, if you're in the dissenting opinion and say your opinion and people don't like it, you know what? Just go with majority wants, even if you think it's a bad idea. It's better to go along with the bad idea if you can live with the consequences than to try to push a good idea. And I think Lucy's just going to be the type of person who's so used to having it a particular way that when it comes time for her to get along with people and to do things that she may not necessarily agree with, she's not going to be able to handle it. So, and plus she just seems stubborn and she just seems like she's not going to be able to adapt with these people. So Lucy, if she's a first boot, would not surprise me.